Well, we're not the only ones taking advantage of the new USMCA. South of the border, they have their own infrastructure projects they're putting together. We have a guest today, Jesus Diaz, that will talk to us a lot about what's going on with our friends south of the border. That and the KCS and the CP are putting together a blockbuster deal, $29 billion to combine forces to turn themselves into a behemoth in several business sectors in North America. Mi nombre es Chris. Bienvenido a JOZ Bytes. Well, welcome again, everybody, to another edition of JOZ Bytes, sponsored by iLevelLogistics.com. That's www.iLevelLogistics.com. Go to that for your aggregated news and information in terms of everything transportation supply chain. We're starting a community of a conversation, if you will, to mainstream and identify places in the supply chain that we all can get better at, both from a professional standpoint and from an everyday standpoint, and understanding the connection between supply chain, transportation, logistics worldwide, and how consumers have a necessary ingredient and part to play in that supply chain. Now, today we're welcoming in a very special guest. We're going to talk a little bit about what's going on south of the border and the USMCA that was put into place back in 2019 with the Trump administration to replace NAFTA. Really created a lot of new developing infrastructural components to both Canada, US, and Mexico. And today we have an absolute expert on that, somebody that I've known for 20 plus years, a gentleman named Jesus Diaz, who has a tremendous history with manufacturers south of the border. Was probably best known as one of the very first people in a Sony factory down in Tijuana, Mexico, and developed a lot of strategies around the logistics that they put together to get their finished products to market in the United States. He since then turned to a more entrepreneurial direction, created his own warehousing and trucking projects, and continues to this day with a family company to develop strategies to both continue to infiltrate markets further south with Mexico, intra-Mexico shipments, and to be an absolute expert and somebody that I can lean on for advice all the time for strategies about moving product from Mexico into the United States. So I wanted to welcome Jesus Diaz. But, welcome again, Jesus. I appreciate you spending a few minutes with me today to kind of just go over some of the happenings in Mexico. And I just have a few questions for you and a few comments that I'm going to make, and maybe you can kind of fill in some of the blanks for me, because, I mean, how long have we known each other? Since late 90s?
20,
Some
20,
Yeah.
30 years.
Well, let's put it this way. I had hair and your beard was black.
and I weighed 195 pounds.
Oh, God. Well, hey, I got you at that spot now. But in any event, I wanted to spend a little time today just kind of talking about how, the advent of the new USMCA, the United States, Mexico, Canada agreement, replacing that 25-year NAFTA agreement. A lot of people look at it in many different ways and say, okay, this is going to affect the United States positively, or Mexico negatively, or Canada positively. Who knows how they look at it? But what ends up happening is all of us that are in the transportation world start finding ways to make new connections with these agreements. And some of the things that you and I met a few days about and talked about in terms of some of the infrastructure things going on in Mexico, I find a lot of interest in that. Now, I know you shot me a quick video and it was all in Spanish, and I know enough Spanish to order beer and find the bathroom is basically my repertoire. But overall, I mean, first of all, if you could, I mean, Jesus Diaz, I think we met first when you were kind of employee number one at Sony, right?
Yeah,
And
Tijuana operate.
yeah, but you did a lot for them in terms of kind of transforming their outbound finished goods logistics. I don't know if you were involved so much in the inbound raw materials. Maybe you were too, but I know you went from a position at a very large factory in Mexico, kind of the primary logistics person, to really an entrepreneurial bent. You started your own warehousing company and your transportation cross-border company and intra-Mexico company. So you've done a lot in the years I've known you. So I appreciate you coming on and spending a little time with us. If you want to, just, if you could give us a little background other than what I've just spilled out, and then we'll just have a couple Q&As and we'll go from there.
Well, basically, I'm a Mexico native. I'm from Tijuana. My parents brought me to the States and kept studying in Mexico. I graduated and Tecnológico de Tijuana, which is a technical school as a industrial engineer, and specialized on electronics. And then after that, started operations in Sony. Basically, all my professional life started from the bottom. I'm talking line operator, all the way to being responsible of the operations in Mexico on the manufacturing side. Responsibly working on the manufacturing side for 15 years. And in my last 5-7 years, total probably 30 years in Sony, working on the logistics area, which I found very, very interesting. A whole new world for me.
So you transferred from the engineering side with them to the logistics?
Yes.
Very good.
Was responsible for manufacturing operations, and I had that engineering departments and the materials departments internal from the factory have the responsibility of the productions of Sony Mexico as a director. And then I moved and took the responsibility of the logistics, as I mentioned, as a director of logistics in the Mexico operations. Our long-term view, we wanted to develop the Sony logistics of Latin America. We started first separating from the manufacturing as an independent logistics provider for the manufacturing plants in Mexico, which was one in Mexicali and the other one on Monterrey, which we achieved that. Our next step was to cover all Central and South America.
So you really broadened their scope from when you were down there. So what made you decide at some point to say, you know what, I really want to try to do some things myself?
When became the opportunity, overall Sony was downsizing, and they really were struggling in the market, and they offered this golden handshake, early retirement for management. And well, I said it was time to try something. And since I fell in love on the logistics area, I said, I'll starting working on warehousing, making a distribution and small operations in Otay, US.
Right.
And we expanded to Mexico and developed our own local transportation here in California and northern Baja California, servicing the industry. And the industry, as you know, has been growing and growing in this area.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. And again, I appreciate you spending a few minutes with us today. And the kind of one of the goals I have for doing this, Jesus, is to really, open up some eyes in the transportation community for more than just the narrow scope of what most, some professional will work for an intermodal company, or they'll work for an OTR company, or they'll work for a port company or ocean company, but they don't have a view of kind of a bigger picture. Putting people like yourself with me on these interview kind of things gives people the understanding that sometimes the picture is larger than they really think. And,
Yes.
a couple of things you and I talked about really got me thinking about how, the United States is going through this um, political battle about this new potential infrastructure plan. It's a huge couple $1 trillion. And, I know that if matter of fact, one of my previous podcasts, I went into how it really is only a very sliver of it is the kind of infrastructure you and I would talk about in terms of transportation. But when you and I talked, you were talking specifically about some things going on, the interocean corridor or interoceana corridor, I think is what you call it,
Mhm.
and how that and also the TMAC corridor are kind of becoming a real prominent thing in Mexico. Can you describe kind of what's going on with both of those a little bit?
Yes, definitely. There's these two particular major projects on the logistics area between Canada, US, and Mexico after that change of NAFTA to the TMAC, which is a new trade agreement between Mexico, United States, and Canada. They have a mega project. Their project they're looking at is building a corridor from Mazatlan, Sinaloa, all the way to Winnipeg, Canada.
Mm.
And basically, this has been put on the table in the last 2 years. It has been blessed by the governments. The last time that three countries got together, they touched this issue, and they really they presented a support to this major project because there is a need to
Mhm.
solve the issues they have on the logistics, on the growth of the international trade. It's
Right.
something they need to have. It's not kind of an option in order to support all these new agreements on the international business trade.
Well, I
And
think you said it. You said it the other day when we were talking. It's not like no matter how the agreements change, it's not like the trade between the United States, Mexico, and Canada is going away anytime soon. It's here to stay, and it's
yes,
growing.
yes, and that's nothing like saying that we're thinking about it or is a might be a good solution. It's already started. Mhm. And they started with a major project of developing a aerospace industrial park where it's going to be the largest port in Latin America. Besides, number one is going to be, of course, we know Long Beach, and this will be the second largest in Latin America port.
Now, is
And
this Mazatlan you're talking about?
the Mazatlan, yes, that port is going to be developed. They started already the aerospace, which I believe is 193 hectares, which is about 400 acres park development on just dedicated to aerospace development industry. Already investors are starting and building. Also, the project for the port already started. The first year, I believe they're planning this year they already started developing the port, and by 2024, they're going to be having the capacity of 1 to 2 million TUs. And then they're going to go through the years 2026. They have a specific plan of increasing the number of TUs that's going to be. The final goal, I believe, is going to go to 8 million TUs, the
Well,
port.
now, Mazatlan it's not that far away from the Panama connection, right? So you've got kind of two things happening at the same time. You've got kind of this competitive thing going on with Panama in a way, but also the TMAC agreement you're talking about as well. Are those interconnected or they're two separate projects? How does that work?
There's two separate projects. The one that I've been talking about is the TMAC. There's a corridor that's going to go from Mazatlan all the way to Canada. And the other major project is going to be on the Istmo. between Oaxaca, which is Salinas Cruz, which already existed at port, through Veracruz, which is one of the largest ports in Mexico. They're developing those two ports in between that is going to be straight competition to Canal of Panama.
Right.
That's going to be a big increase of an industry around this
That area.
rail corridor from Pacific to Pacific interoceanic connection, basically.
Actually, I think that corridor right there between those two ports you're talking about is less distance than the Panama connection, or very
Yes.
similar.
And time-wise, that's the
Yeah.
most important. Time-wise, besides the rail, which is going to be the main transportation mode, it's going to be new highways to support the over-the-road cargoes too.
Right, right.
They have already started industrial parks all along the way of this corridor, which is going to be a lot of investments from different countries, but mainly the trade that is done from the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean to South America and North America is going to be a big time savings on this. And you know, time is money.
Well, you think about the timing on this kind of stuff too, because the little article you sent me to look at, a little video you sent about that transoceanic thing, was talking about March of this year, you know, so a lot of this stuff is very much deep into process. And of course, the time, you know, with what happened in the Suez Canal recently with that ship getting
Yes.
caught, everybody's looking at Panama going, how safe is Panama Canal with this kind of stuff, which is a lot different kind of canal,
Yes.
of course, but still having this new, you know, cross continent connecting the thing, that's going to be huge.
Yes, basically, project as of end of March is 34% overall project completed, meaning the railroad upgrade, the new sections of railroad, and also the upgrade of both ports. The overall project already 30%. They're forecast to have finished everything by 2022.
Wow, that's going to be fantastic, and it goes. Interestingly, you keep calling the one project the TMAC. So
TMAC.
that's the Mexico version of USMCA, right? It's the same thing. We're talking the agreement, and if I remember right, it starts in Mazatlan, but then it goes to Durango and Monterrey before it gets to Laredo, Dallas, Tulsa, and then I think eventually Winnipeg. And I was looking at a couple of maps that I'll put online here for everybody to see as well. I was looking at a couple of maps, and it really keys in on some of the industries around automotive in particular. You know, automotive is such a huge thing that, you know, that I mean, everybody from Nissan to Ford to Audi to VW to GM to Chrysler, they all have plants of some kind for their production scattered all over Mexico, whether it's, you know, San Luis Potosí or places like that. And those are all going to be connected to go up into North America and all the way to Canada, depending energy as well, things like that. So is that what you're seeing too?
Basically, not only on the U.S. side, but on the Mexico side, already having, for example, Ford putting the strategic new location that they're having on their manufacturing in Mexico is going to be next door to this new corridor, which is going to be connecting on raw material supplies from different vendors on the U.S. to the manufacturing plants to that area around Mazatlan, specifically at Hermosillo. And it's going to be definitely automotive industry, excellent connections on logistics with this new project.
Yeah, I think it's amazing because I know you know, I've dealt a little bit with freight going into and out of places like Silao and, you know, Mexico City and, you know, Querétaro, things like that. But it's been, you know, it's very interesting because a lot of the railheads San Luis Potosí, Silao, things like that, you would have these contingent plans to go all the way to Laredo via some over the road, component to get to where you're going or come from. And while that still is going to be part of things, I'm sure having these infrastructure programs is just going to make things so much more efficient. And I would imagine even crossing the border will be easier for those that don't have to necessarily clear customs except while in transit. Things, it's just going to be way more efficient, I would think.
Yes, definitely. One of the plans that Mexico has on this project is exactly what you mentioned. This corridor in Mexico is going to have railroad connection to 10 different states in Mexico, which some parts are already there that is going to be connected, and some parts that are going to build it. But the plan is to all different 10 states in Mexico to supply either raw materials or finished goods to the industry.
Are they leaving Baja hanging out by themselves?
As of right now, yes, because the from Baja is very high. If talking about Ensenada, and if you look at it, they're kind of as a mini comparison what they're developing right now, because Ensenada, basic California, and Long Beach to Baja, and that's it. But this one is you're talking about from the Pacific side and Mazatlan all the way to Canada. Central Canada, all Central Canada is going to be the distribution from there.
There's just so much. I mean, Mexico is the #1 trading partner of the United States.
Yes.
Has a very long time and will continue to be, I assume, for a very long time. So these kind of connections are hugely important to all of us on both sides, on every side of every border. Even Canada, its distribution network for a lot of the materials coming out, or a lot of the finished goods coming out of Mexico is going to be huge. Winnipeg is an interesting place to go, but this whole thing corresponds with what's going on with the CP Railroad and the KCS Railroad, because there's about a $29 billion purchase that's occurring. The CP's purchasing the KCS, or is trying to get clearance by the Surface Transportation Board to do that. And that's kind of the final nudge with what exactly you're talking about. That's because that's a component of the whole thing. They are really just trying to connect a north-south corridor that's going to be just as expansive as the east-west one from port to port in the United States. I think it's huge. And now the other thing, and maybe the final thing we can talk about for a little bit, because you know me and you, we could probably go on forever about these things and get into the weeds, and everybody watching or listening would go, okay, that's enough information. But you had mentioned a couple of very interesting things in terms of some of the ways that the new markets, the online markets, are driving some of the methods of doing business on less than truckload transportation from plants in Mexico to U.S. points, but also intra-Mexico points as well, as far as how people are breaking up their shipments in the segments and doing direct distribution. Could you go into that a little bit, or do you have an NDA? You can't talk about that, or what?
No. Basically, this changes on the international trade laws between U.S. and Mexico, and based on what we have seen and live all this pandemic period that is teaching us to do business a different way, where actually everything is going directly from manufacturing plants to the end consumer. And that's the e-commerce. And then in order to promote a better international trade on the e-commerce side, Mexico has developed some rules as far as exporting their materials in regards to the tariff, where if you export a product and document it in less than $800 per item, is going to be no taxes on them. It's going to be basically you don't have to pay any charge getting out of Mexico.
So that's almost like so that's avoiding the Mexico VAT tax? Is that what it's doing, or is it?
Yes.
And is it per item or per PO? I would imagine, right? Per PO.
Per PO.
Okay.
Per PO.
or effect, or however you'd want to couch it. So that
Yes.
is, see, that's to me is a game changer, especially for the less than truckload environment that's out there, because folks like yourself and I, who have done a lot of transloading over the years, we've always looked at things to move them in full truckload shipments cross border, and then create a deconsol and reconcile kind of process on the U.S. side. But if a lot of that can be done in Mexico, geez, it's again, we're talking, the supply chain. I know I'm going off the rail a little bit here, but the supply chain in general has a lot of links to it. And a lot of them, when you look at it, have very robust, solid links, and some of them are kind of weak at times. And one of those things is the delay in distribution from manufacturing a finished good to you and I as a consumer buying it on whatever online resource we use. And nobody has any desire to wait for anything anymore. And this is just provide a much more robust supply chain to get those products to the end user, and an incentive financially for both the Mexican manufacturer to do it and the U.S. consumer to pay for getting it done that way.
And all of this already, people started getting advantage of these new rules, regulations. Very few people knows about it. Very few people is taking advantage of it, but it can be a huge thing as far as making business between the two countries and doing direct distributions. Basically, the mapping or the logistics flow that they're using is bringing some subassembly product to Mexico, finish it here, label it with a FedEx or UPS tag, and ship it directly from here.
Right.
No tax.
That's well, sooner or later somebody's going to pay for all these different things, and
yes,
it goes down to the consumer. But the point is that if you want to make the supply chain more fluid and dynamic, this is one of the great ways to do it. And the new USMCA, or as you called it, I forget, TMAC, right? That agreement allows you to do a lot of these kinds of things. But I think, the three things we went over, the Interoceana, am I saying that right? Is Interoceana corridor?
Yes.
That, and the TMAC corridor from Mazatlan all the way up to Winnipeg, and the CP KCS combination, and then this dynamic proposal to ship in smaller increments to avoid certain taxations. It's almost like you're creating a massive free trade zone outside of it. So that's fantastic. Yeah.
That's a good way to look at it. It's a massive free trade zone that you're going to be moving the merchandises from one point to another point without, paying all these duties.
Right. Well, I hope it's okay, Jesus, because I would really like to, and I'm sure I'm going to get plenty of comments online with this podcast, but I would love to pick your brain from time to time and bring you on and get your perspective on things that are going on. And I know you have a perspective outside of Mexico as well, but I think that another thing we talked about, we'll save for another day, but you were talking about how dynamic intra-Mexico is becoming in the distribution into Mexico. Maybe next time we get together, we can chat a little bit about that and fill the audience in on some of those kinds of things.
Yes, and basically anybody that is interested in more details, we can provide them information, more technical information on these new projects, and also this new way of making business on less than a truckloads.
Right, and for everyone out there, I'll put a little link to some contact information for Jesus or one of his team, depending on what he would like. And again, Jesus, I thank you very, very much for coming aboard with iLevelLogistics.com and sharing some of your insight with this. And I look forward to the next time that we can get together and do this. Appreciate it. And maybe put some subtitles in there to make sure that our Spanish-speaking friends can watch this as well.
Okay.
All right.
Gracias.
Hey there, don't forget to check us out on YouTube, our channel there, any of the social media platforms, and of course our audio podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere you catch your podcast. Looking forward to seeing you soon.